Thank you for joining the DIMPRP Podcast, the podcast that brings together public relations professionals and influencers. I am your host, Vanessa Abron, and I'm glad you joined us today. Okay, you guys, I have another exciting guest for you per usual. Let's bring to the stage Ms. Taylor Justin. Taylor Justin is the founder and chief curator at TheHauteSeeker.com. She's an Ohio-born transplant who is now living in Chicago, and she loves to vintage shop, museum hop, and live like a local in every city that she visits. She's a graduate from Savannah College of the Art and Design with a BFA in fashion marketing and management, and has extensive experience in luxury fashion, furniture, food service, and nonprofit industries. She is going to bring to us a perspective of an influencer, so let's give her a round of applause. So tell us about what the TheHauteSeeker is doing.
Yeah, so the TheHauteSeeker. So, I mean, the year definitely became an adjustment. I think a lot of what this year had in store, consisted of not necessarily doing the same things, but expanding on like some of the bigger content that's been doing really well for us, which has just been like a lot of cool places to see in the city. We had started off doing a lot of like happy hour focused content, which was really picking up. The weekend guides, which are always consistent for us, those are doing pretty well. We started doing like monthly guides so that people had kind of like a summary of all the cool stuff that was happening during the month. And then we were expanding on what could we do in terms of just like, not city expansion, more Chicagoland expansion. So that was something that we were, playing around with too. So, since COVID has started, in respecting what was happening around in our world, we kind of put things on pause and started shifting our content to things that you could do in a small capacity or indoors. And so we had released like a date night for at home. We had like 13 date ideas to explore like in the city of Chicago, which you can pick them up a little bit now because some of them are broad enough where you don't have to necessarily social distance from another party or anything. But we did like date nights at home, which like got really good Google search traction. And we did one that focused on like really cool parks and gardens because we wanted people to like utilize those free spaces that your tax dollars pay for and also get out and explore different neighborhoods in the city. So that's been a really organic search for us. We had released a bottomless and boozy brunch list right before this all started. So that's been doing pretty consistent. That's shifted a little bit. So a lot of our content, it does tend to be very food and arts driven. And a lot of those places are either closed or they've shifted their business model. And so we're really just trying to figure out ways to, again, share responsible content for people and just give creative ways of still seeking out the cities that you love and the places that you love in this new environment that we're in. Our most recent post focused on small cities and cool towns to visit. So showing a lot of love to a lot of smaller towns in the Midwest so that people have the capacity to gather a group of friends together, solo trip or family trip. They're within a distance that's less than 5 hours from any of like the major Midwest cities.
Saw that list.
Oh, you did? Yeah. So that was really fun. So I collaborated with a couple other Midwest-based bloggers to gather a lot of that information, which was cool.
That was a good list, though. Honestly, I'm debating if I want to take my niece and nephew to one of those places.
Yes, do it and let me know. I mean, there's places on there that I'm like, ooh, I need to go. I've been to, I don't know, maybe like 3 of the places that were listed.
Which
so cool
3?
I'm trying to go. So I've been to Yellow Springs. I've been to Bowling Green because I'm from Ohio, so I've been in those areas. And then I've been to the Chesterton area, so I've been to the Indiana Dunes area. I really want to go to Galena, Illinois. I would love to do that before I start this new gig. So I'm going to see how I can do that. There are some cool places in like the Kansas area. And I've never been to Kansas before. So I'm like, oh, that seems kind of cool. Um, so yeah, there was a couple cool spots on there that I'm like, I could do this quick trip.
What are your thoughts about like staying at hotels and stuff like that, during COVID, like, and making sure that these hotels are doing what they're supposed to do between each stay? Because I remember, like, even before COVID, like, there was always like this thing that hotels aren't always as clean as you think they are.
I know,
And
yeah.
so I've been kind of hesitant about going places because of that, because it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, are you really that, like, I don't know.
I kind of feel like I would trust a hotel at this point versus staying at someone's home.
Hmm.
Um, just because I feel like the hotel, because there's not as much occupancy at this point, should be cleaner than staying at a home. But I don't know. They probably are both like, they're probably both at the same level of
Right.
hygiene at this point. You know what I mean? So I think it's just a matter of like taking the precautions that you need to take to make sure that you stay healthy. So it's like finding out beforehand, like what they're doing to make sure their guests and their staff are practicing safe cleaning habits or healthy hygiene and stuff like that. So just finding out before your arrival what they're doing, like when was the last time this room was clean? Because I'm sure if it's not occupied, they're not cleaning it that consistently. But like, okay, are you going to clean out this room that you're giving me before I go in there? Where are the sanitizing stations? Like, what are you doing? What is the staff doing? Like when we have an interaction, all those things, are you using more technology to help with like check-in and the checkout process? There's less of that face-to-face contact. So I think there's a lot of stuff that traveling, especially in this time, if if you're not sure of like where you're going, like if it's not a family's home or a friend's home, that you just take precaution to do what you need to do in order to stay healthy. And that's doing research beforehand, whether it's an Airbnb or a hotel. Like I said, I think I might be more down to stay at a hotel than in somebody's home right now.
Gotcha. Of that list that you just mentioned, of like all the places, which one that you've been to, which was your favorite and why?
So I really enjoyed Yellow Springs, and I might be a little partial to it just because I'm from that area. But the thing that I really love about Yellow Springs is that in a community like Ohio, which is mostly Black and white, like that's what I grew up with, and very like blue collar. Yellow Springs for me was definitely like a very welcoming place for someone who's very much into the arts and very much into culture. And that place didn't feel like, the steel mills that surrounded it and the factory life that surrounded it. It was like, a lot of eccentric Black, brown, whoever people who made up that community and are super welcoming and like just has like it's such a cool vibe. Like it has a certain energy when you go there. It has like not a lot of natural landscapes and a lot of places for you just to go if you're looking for just like being one with nature type of thing. And then I think like the shopping is pretty cool. Like they have a lot of like indie type of markets there, lots of great places to stop and eat, very, very localized. And like I said, it's super welcoming. And I've always felt like that even growing up and going out there, like, it's like, okay, I'm going to drive to Yellow Springs today and just like chill out and feel like I'm back in, my old like alumni hipster based type of thing. 'Cause it just gives
Right.
you that vibe. Like it definitely feels very warm like that. And growing up, I didn't necessarily always have that just because it's not like, like Dayton is like one of those places. And so Yellow Springs was definitely that place
Mhm.
for people like myself. And so that's why I'm always very partial to it. Yeah.
It
It
sounds so cute and quaint. Oh my
is.
gosh.
It's really cute. It's super walkable. That's the city that like Dave Chappelle lives in right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's lived there for years. I remember seeing Dave Chappelle like in the city when I was like growing up. Like when I was like, I don't know, in middle school, I would see him. But he's been out there for like several like decades at this
Yeah.
point. And so people will randomly like run into him, but like he always does like community stuff. Like when I was home, I like completely missed it. But I think he had like a outdoor concert during the 4th of
Mhm.
July, and he's always having them. I think you just have to like be his neighbor or something, or
Just be
subscribe to.
real. Like,
Yeah,
he
he's
just wants you to be real.
he does. It's just like, hey, it's happening, and it's like, oh, okay, let me hurry up and get there. But yeah, and it's like it's cool that he does stuff like that, because I feel like so often people like leave and they don't really give back to the communities, or they move to places like that and they're not really a part of it. They just kind of use it for like isolation. He definitely is very much a part of Yellow Springs. Like people say that all the time. Like people will see him all the time in Dayton, like picking up something or going to Whole Foods or whatever. And I think that's so important. I think so often, and I think we even realize it more so being in this period now, we hold people at such like a high regard and put so many people on pedestals, and you do that and you forget that these people are human. Like Dave Chappelle, just like all the celebrities that he might bring into Dayton, these are all humans. And I think like him living there and continuing to live there and sending his kids to school there, and his wife and stuff being there and just being out in the city is just like, oh, okay, he's here. It's like you kind of move on.
Right. I think that's what makes him so cool though. Like, and that's what makes him like who he is like, I love the fact, even I know other celebrities have done it, but not a lot. But like the celebrities that do that live in like just regular parts of the world that's not necessarily Hollywood or New York or whatever. Like I feel like them as individuals keeps them relatable.
Oh, for sure.
It keeps them relatable. And when you're like a comedian or you're delivering some sort of artistic content that other people have to feed off of, like you have to stay relatable. And I think, not to talk about him, but we're going to talk about him. Like I think it's about Kanye West, you know, like Kanye West is like when he first came out, he was like, people loved him because his content was just like super relatable. Like
Yeah.
I remember first album he came out with, and I heard Spaceship, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like I must have played that song like 1,000 times. And then like going through the rest of the album, like even listening to it now, like some of the songs are just so freaking relatable. And then it's like, yes, you know, artists grow and they have new experiences and they do different things. And I'm not going to go too deep into his life and his world and what's going on with him because that's irrelevant. But he's not relatable anymore, at least not to a lot of his fans that were his fans, like his initial fans. Like we can't relate to him. It's like, you can do whatever you want to do, bro. Like you can grow, you can say what you want to say, but at the end of the day, it's like if you're not relatable, you're just not relatable. And then you get a new audience, which is fine. But yeah, but I feel like part of it is because Kanye isn't here. You know,
Right.
he's not here. I don't think he's surrounded by the people that, you know, he grew up, not to say people he grew up with, but like, yeah, I feel like if he was here or like just not there, it would make a difference.
For sure. I think anybody, like when you're in a position where, like you said, you change and you grow, that is still very important to be relatable to audiences that started off with you. And I think about like even my journey as a blogger, it's like I never want to get to a point where I'm not relatable. Like my content has always been very focused on you should feel comfortable going into these spaces, no matter what you look like or who you look like, enjoy what the city has to offer. And it's like if I started switching my content where it became either too much of something or less of something else, and it didn't continue to focus on just providing unique experiences and unique things that you wouldn't find on any other platform, then it's no longer like relatable. And it's like, I feel like I see people, switch it up just to get on a wave. And it's like, nobody wants that. Nobody wants you to pander to them. Like, that's not how this works. Like, you got to stay true to your authentic self. And that's why people, started following you to begin with and started to really enjoy who you were to begin with. And when you remain in that, like, that's how you continue to be relevant. And you don't have to pull certain stunts or say things that just seem super left or do things that seem super left just to remain relevant. Like, you're always going to remain relevant because you haven't changed just because the situation has changed.
I would say, as a PR professional who's worked with different bloggers and content creators, that I would definitely respect that, because from my point of view, it keeps me like, okay, this is what this person does. So if I have something that's related to this, I know I can go to this person and it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Where, I've had some people that I've worked with, some bloggers, it was kind of like saddening, where I've seen them, like when they first started, they were more, like, just, I don't want to say real, but like it was more relatable. And then as I seen them grow, it was less about being relatable and more about like, well, who do you know? What celebrity is, attached to this? Or what big brand what sexy brand is attached to this? And if there wasn't a sexy brand, or if it wasn't a celebrity, then it's like, okay, well, we're not going to talk to you. And then I remembered that. I'll be honest, I remembered that because then when I did have the celebrity and the sexy brand, I didn't go to them anymore. I would still go to my relatable people, because I was like, well, they deserve this more, because like they're continuous, like I don't want to just give the celebrity topics and the sexy stuff to the people that only cover sexy stuff. Right. Like I want to give it to the person that has like very well-rounded content that's for everybody. And I don't know, it's just an experience. I don't know, because then I guess I feel like we're being used too, which I mean, I feel like it shouldn't be about being used. It should be mutually beneficial, right?
Yes, agreed.
And I feel like, I don't know. I do remember, like, as a PR professional, like I was like, okay, you only want me if I have X, Y, and Z. So now that when I do have X, Y, and Z, you're not going to get it because you made it very clear. Does that sound bad?
No, it doesn't. I think that's how a relationship works. Like you said, it has to be mutually beneficial. Like you can't expect to take and then not have anything to give. And it's like, even if you might have something to give, is what you're giving an actual real return on the investment that I'm making in terms of like what I was able to give you. Like, again, it has to be mutually beneficial. And I think a lot of times, like sometimes those relationships are not. I think the relationships that I've been able to build with the PR professionals like yourself, I know ours is like an ongoing, growing relationship, but there's some other PR people that I've reached out to or have reached out to me, and it's a growing thing. And it's like kind of setting those expectations early. Like, this is what I have to offer. What also can you offer me besides like this lead? Like, what else can we do? Like, is this going to be a continuous relationship, or is there something else we can think of outside of me just posting this on my blog? Because I think now, because we're in this, we have to start thinking about what this new normal look like. It's a new set of challenges of like, well, if we only had a relationship where it was just based off of social media, what else is there? Because I think people are looking for something more, and people are looking for, well, how are these experiences that I can no longer have in person, and I can't get that beautiful picture off of this food shot like you did, because I don't have like the table setting and I don't have all this. Like, how do I still manage to still have that type of experience at home? And so I think it's a new era of like, we get to challenge those relationships. And, you all as PR professionals get to challenge your clients about how to utilize relationships that you have with influencers a little bit differently than what we've been piggybacking off of for maybe like the last 10 years. And instead of it just being like a simple, take this flick of you, the food, and the environment, it's like, how does that look like at home? Because again, being in this position where I'm sharing all this information and people can easily find it, is I want it to be responsible. So I don't want to send somebody off to a restaurant that's no longer open, or I don't want to share this service that they're no longer doing, or I want to be able to share what the alternatives are and not encourage people to get sick. Like, you have to be healthy and like mentally healthy, physically healthy. And it's like, I'm not going to send you off to die over standing in line trying to get some food just to have this experience. Like, that's so selfish. Like, I want you to be able to still have that same type of experience, whatever it is, but in a different way. Why can't we still go to this restaurant, get the food to go, get the booze to go, and post up at like one of these cute parks and make a day out? Like, there's so many ways to enjoy things without doing it the old way. Like, we have to kind of realize that, like, we're not going back. I've accepted it. Because I'm a person that stands for innovation. So I'm like, yeah, let's figure out how to stream these events into our homes and do this and do that and sell packages. Like, I think there's just so many ways to like do it. And I think as an influencer, like, I'm excited to present and then be a part of ways to share out those new experiences, because I think I can still seek seek the unseen in Chicago, but this is something that's unseen. This is something we've never done before. So how do we share that out so that people are like, okay, I can still enjoy these parts of Chicago. I just have to do it differently.
I totally agree with you. And you said something about like the old way, but I think what you're talking about is like the original way, because when we think about blogging, like blogging was just something that, like, if you think about the original concept of it, like way back in the day, it started as people were having these online journals that they were willing to share with the public, and people started following because it was that magic word, relatable. It's like, oh, this is like my friend that I don't know her, but I feel a connection to this person because of their content, and like they're sharing themselves like they're my friend, and this is why I'm following them. So now when they recommend something, it's like my girlfriend is recommending it to me versus anyone else. So then it was like, oh, because these people are relatable, they have a following, so then brand starts to recognize that, like, oh, these people have a very strong following, let's see what happens if we started using them for collaborations. And they were like, okay, let's try it out and see. And so then it just spiraled out of control like this. So now it was like, oh, I'm a content creator and I'm only going to do things for pay. And so then it kind of got away from that whole, this is who I am, this is, I'm being relatable and I'm just sharing my world with you. Like, it got away from that. And so now that, like you said, now that we can't go places and we can't, take the pictures of us at this big event with all these celebrities and influencers and people of stature, like, how are you? And it's like basically going back to the basics, like, well, show us who you really are.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you doing at home? What are you doing outside? What are some creative ways that you're doing stuff? Like, you're still living. Show us how you're living.
That's so true. That's so true. Yeah, you're right. It is the original way of just being authentic and not getting caught up, like you said, doing it for monetization, but really doing it to show, like you said, that this person is relatable and I can take their advice or see what they're sharing and be like, oh, I can do this too. Or I can experience this too. So I totally agree, for sure.
You mentioned something too about like building relationships with like brands and PR professionals and how it's been pretty much a good experience for you. And like you said, now maybe like some brands and are kind of putting things on hold because of, they just don't know how their funding is going to look within the future. So if someone just wanted to build an authentic relationship with you, like, hey, I don't have a campaign, but some of the brands I work with probably will fit your brand. Like, let's just develop a relationship, like, how would you recommend someone going about that with you at this point?
Well, that's a good question. I would say, like, of course, just reaching out and just having an understanding of like what it is that, I cover and like what we stand for as a brand. So like if you have like, folks that you work with or brands that you work with and they fit into the spectrum of, is it Chicago or Chicagoland based or even Midwest based? Because we're pretty much open at this point. Is it unique? Is it welcoming? And I do my research. So I know the brands that I've worked with before or currently, if they have an environment that is diverse and inclusive, or if it doesn't. And I don't promote anything that doesn't, because if I didn't find it on my own accord and experienced it for myself in some capacity, whether it was a part of a restaurant group or the event itself, then I'm not necessarily going to promote it. Or if I haven't been and we're having this conversation, then I'm going to look at, well, what have you done for my audience lately? So I will check your social media. I will look at where you stand with certain things, even before all this stuff happened. Like, this is just, me being a part of it. And if those don't fit into the parameter, then I would have to really have to have that conversation with you as to why you're looking to partner with us to begin with. Like, is it for exposure because, I'm a Black founder of this brand? Is it because I'm a woman? Like, why are you trying to have this exposure? Because there's a ton of other publications. So why TheHauteSeeker? Like, why do we stick out as a brand that you want to connect with? And I think we have to have that open conversation. And again, this is nothing new. Like, I do my research and I want people that I'm partnering with to also do theirs about us. And we can build off of that. Once we kind of establish where we are, we can, figure out what it is now or in the future that we could do, what type of support we're going to continuously give each other. Like, especially for some of the things that I said are number one searches on Google, they get there because I write it well enough so that the content is evergreen. So if it's something that's 2 years ago, I might still get a number one search ranking in Google because it was written very well. So if I'm sharing that with you, the minimum of my expectation is that you reshare my content, because that's how things get viral. And if we can't even agree on that, then I'm probably not going to partner with you, because I'm not asking for pay. I'm asking for something that is very valuable to the success of our platform, which is that reshare. And that, I feel like that's, super important. And so I think that at the end of the day, when it comes to just building a relationship, again, going back to mutually beneficial, that it's like you do your research ahead of time, and that we both do, and we figure out what the objective is for this partnership. Like, how are we both trying to grow? What does that look like? And then can we both agree on expectations of support? Are you willing to share this on your social media that you partnered with us, just like we're willing to promote? And is your message going to be consistent even after like our partnership? So are you going to include us in your press? Are you going to include the photos? Or you can do, it just has to be very thoughtful at this point, because I know who I would want to partner with. So I would hope that when people are looking out for us, that they have an idea of why they want to partner with us as well.
That is super smart and brilliant. Like I said, I think earlier what we were talking about is like, we got to this point where I think a lot of brands and influencers were more concerned with numbers, like on social. And I don't mean numbers, like you said, you just mentioned something. I have a lot of thoughts going on in my mind. So it's kind of like stumbling my thoughts. So it was like the numbers thing. And I think we got caught up in the social media numbers. Like, this is how many followers you have on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. But then we forget about, like you said, like the blog. The blog, you just said, like, you may not have, 50,000 followers on Instagram, but your articles get reshared and it pops up on Google and things like that. And I think, and like you said, and the reason why it does that is because it's searchable. People are searching these things and it's evergreen. And I think a lot, like, from a brand's perspective, like, they look at, oh, well, how many followers do they have? And, blah, blah, blah. And I think now they're starting to realize that that means absolutely nothing, because A, people can buy followers now. And two, even if you have a lot of followers, they may not be engaged. And when I say engaged, I don't mean likes and comments. I'm talking about, like, how are they really engaging with the actual product that you're presenting? Like, are they going back? Like, once you talk about it, or the product or the brand or the event, are they going back to the brand's website to research it, and to see if it's something they want to look at, like, are they actually purchasing? Are they actually going to the event? Are they, like, that's the type of engagement I'm talking about. Like, okay, once they see, because that book I told you about earlier, I found out about that book from an influencer. Well, it was a YouTuber, and she was talking about manifestation, and it was a book that she used. And I was like, oh, let me look into this book. And that's how I started buying it, because another influencer used it. But it wasn't like, oh, this is a book. This is what it does. You should get it. It was like, she told me how she was using it. And I was like, yeah, I want to do something similar. Like you said, it's like, you're somebody, at the end of the day, as an influencer, you're not just a pretty face, or, just someone that's putting out really cool, content that looks super like, oh, you talking about this celebrity or this sexy brand. And not to say there's anything wrong with that, but, like, initially you were my best friend. You were my virtual best friend. And I think people forget about that. Like,
yeah.
And you're doing it as, like, you think of your readers as your virtual best friend.
I just think about people who, anytime I write about something, I just think about what my story was. And it's like, I moved here. I didn't have any family or friends here. I don't have any family here still. And I've grown my tribe ever since. But, like, I didn't know what I was doing here. I just moved to a big city, or, a bigger city than where I was from. And I was like, oh, I don't know anything about Chicago. Like, this is off of a whim, girl. And so I moved to the South Side, and I was like, I want to find stuff to do. And it's not over here, unfortunately, not in the capacity that I wanted it. And so I went to far north side neighborhoods to find vintage pieces, because I wasn't finding that anywhere near me. And I went to the west side to find food that reminded me of food that I had in Savannah when I was going to school. Like, I needed my broils and stuff like that. So I went to go find it. And I went downtown for certain things, and I went, farther south to experience certain parts of the nation. So it's like, in anything that I put out, it's, again, like you said, making that virtual connection. Like, I want people to find and enjoy the things that I was searching hard for, and make it so much easier for them just to enjoy the city. Like, there's so many great experiences that I've had, and that have really made my experience here very enjoyable. And it's like, I want it to be so much easier for transplants like myself, or women like myself, or Black women, or, Black people. It's like, if you're into something, it's over here, and you should feel comfortable going to do it. Because I've already done it. I can show you the videos. I did the whole process. And so it's like, if that's what you want to go do it, and don't feel intimidated about it. And like you said, I think that it all comes down to the message. So if people intentionally want to be an influencer, and their purpose is to monetize, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because you know what your purpose is. But on the other hand, is that a long-term thing? I don't know, because I think now a lot of people just starting to question the motives of everyone. And so I think at the end of the day, it's like, whatever you're going into it for, just be intentional And if that shift changes, be sure to make that true, genuine connection with your audience or your brand partners so that everyone remains accountable, I think.
Mm-hmm. You said something too that was really poignant. Because I do think like being an influencer is like a new career. It's not a
Yeah.
career that's been on the map for like years and years and years. And
Right.
it's this new career that people start to see can be profitable. But I think it's like any other career, you know, like it can be profitable. But it's like you can go into any job and be profitable if, you know, but I think what makes the difference is like your passion for it and your connection to it. Like, let's say, for example, like I know people that became accountants because it was a good, stable job and it had, you know, you can get benefits, you know, like the whole thing that baby boomer parents told us, like,
Yeah.
get you a good job. They got you some benefits that's stable that you can get you a pension with and just
Right.
stay there. And it's like, okay, so I'm an accountant for this reason. And people hate it. Like I hate being an accountant. I've never been an accountant.
Yeah, but
Accounting courses knew from college that I was not going to be an accountant, no matter what anyone told me. And it was like, this is horrible. Like I'm bored out of my mind. And then what happens is I think people get into these jobs where they see other people making money, but they're not making money. I think it's because like that's not where you're supposed to be. Like, so now I'm shifting a little bit. Like now I'm shifting into my energy reader mindset, you know, like you're not making money because that's not what you're supposed to be doing. Like even my personal story, like I had this dream job of working, you know, this, you know, being a director of communications at this corporation. And I was going to be there long term and it was going to be steady and great, and got that job and was only there for 6 months. Did not work, you know, and it looked every bit of how I manifested it, you know, like, oh, and I manifested it only because I was told this will make good, you will make good money. It looks good, the title. And people did. They looked at me like, oh, Vanessa's doing blah, 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 blah. And I was put up into this high regard because I had this title and position at this particular company, but no one cared that I was miserable and wasn't happy and didn't feel fulfilled at the end of the day, and yet was working so hard and was working so hard that I couldn't even enjoy the fruits of the labor that I was producing because I was on this treadmill that I could never get off of. And just running. And eventually what happens when you're on a treadmill, you keep going, you can't stop, you just fall off, and it's just horrible. Like it's just this big sloppy mess, right? So that happened, and then, you know, was devastated and everybody looked at me like, you should have made that work. Like you had this and I would have figured it out. But then I realized like that wasn't my path. And so when I figured out my path and what I was supposed to be doing, it was just a little bit easier. And not to say that it didn't have its hard times, definitely struggled. But even amidst the struggle, like even the struggle feels right. Like, it's like, yeah, this isn't working out, but I still feel like I'm on the right path, as opposed to like, this isn't the right path at all. And so I think people look at influencer like, oh, this is a cute new job. I get to be pretty. I get to take all these cute pictures. I get to meet these people and get invited places and get paid for it. Like, oh, that's easy, where maybe you're really supposed to be the accountant because that's who you really are. Or maybe you're supposed to be the engineer, or maybe a fitness instructor. Who knows? You know, but I feel like people just take this role and like they become an influencer not for the right reasons. And because they don't do it for the right reasons, they struggle.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I agree. Have to go into it with intention, though, like no matter what it is that you're doing. And like you said, if it's not, it's a new career path for sure, but it's something that if you find it to be a struggle, then that's a big no. But like you said, a lot of perception wise too, that people think a lot of things are sexy before they start doing it. And then it's like, oh, this is a lot harder. Like I didn't know it required this much effort. Like I think a lot of people perception wise, they see me out and about and the things that I capture, And it's like, yeah, it's cool. It's definitely sexy, but it's not like it wasn't an easy path to get there. And doing all the before and after work is definitely not sexy. It's not that fun. It's like it requires like a lot of effort and concentration and all those things that also come in the effort of when you're trying to hustle for something. But yeah, I think that's the gift and the curse of social media, is that you can always control the perception. And that's how you know, get to people having billions of followers, and how you have some people who are just like, they are where they are because it's the perception that you give off. But I think that might be a conversation for a whole nother day about how that goes, right?
Well, I will wrap this up by saying the perception, if anyone has a perception of me that my life is easy, I'm so sorry that I gave you that
That's
perception.
not it.
It's not intentional. Yes, I show the highlights, but it's mainly before my highlights. Like I look at my social media as my personal journal,
Oh, for
you know,
sure.
like, so I put the highlights, like, yeah, I'm sharing it with you, but it's like, I want to go back. Like I actually look at my social media like, oh yeah, I remember that memory. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I remember when I did that. You know, like I want to look back at it for my own personal enjoyment more so than
definitely,
you. So that's
definitely.
why it's the highlights reel, because
Yeah,
it's for me.
for me.
You
Yeah.
know, but trust and believe. I think people also think this about PR, like, oh, they think our jobs are sexy. That's 20% of the job.
Right.
80%, I'm behind a computer, sending emails, typing up something, calling people, being told no about something. And it's so funny because like it comes out more so when I get a new intern. Because I think interns, they want to be like, they come out of school like, okay, I'm going to PR. Like, okay, great. You're gonna be my intern. I'm gonna show you everything. And then they see it and they're like, what is this? I'm,
Right.
I'm like, yeah, this is PR. The
Right.
majority of things that you're doing is putting together lists, researching, you know, reaching out to people, having them tell you no. Some have reporters scream at you because they're busy and they're on deadline. You happen to call them at the wrong time of the day. Like, yeah, that's the majority of the job. Just get used to it. And they're like, I don't know about this. I'm like, that cute stuff, that's only 20%.
Right, right. Totally agree, girl. Totally agree.
So before we wrap up, tell us like how what you're working on right now and how we can support you.
Yeah, so right now the Hot Seeker is working on fall content, you know, a lot of September, October type of pieces, late August pieces. So right now working on things like work from hotels, so experimenting outside of the work from home and, you know, showing a little bit of love to like, I used to work out of hotels a lot in my previous role when I was in outside sales for Coca-Cola. So I have a lot of familiarity with the space and a lot of cool hotels. And so that's one post that I'll have upcoming. Updating posts like the bottomless brunch post, and some stuff has shifted in the food and restaurant industry. What else did I have coming up? Trying to see some of the what we can do in terms of like the food and beverage industry. Most, you know, because I really do miss going out to restaurants just like the next person. So just figuring out how to bring back that content in a new and refreshing way. And then ongoing, I'm sharing posts about virtual events. So was doing like my weekend seeker guides, but wanted to switch it up and just doing like a weekly post of virtual and in-person events for people to enjoy. And that's actually turning out really well. It's giving people kind of these hybrid experiences. People feel like they have options, right? And versus like, oh, I just got to go out to experience something fun. And again, being a responsible influencer, I want to make sure that I'm providing both sides of the spectrum. So having that weekly content come out, it should have been released this morning about events to check out this week. So some cool things at Navy Pier. There's an event hosted this weekend. I think it's Friday by the Puerto Rican Arts Alliance, and they're doing like an outdoor event.
Are
That's
they
at Navy.
still doing the flat rate of $20 for parking?
I'm not sure because it's at the Polk Arts Center, so that's like the front half of Navy Pier and that like outdoor space.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure what their parking is right now, but I'll tell you all, I prefer to use things like ParkWiz or Spot Hero. I feel like those are much cheaper options, and like there's really cheap parking like by Navy Pier, like in that lower Whacker space. Just be
Mhm.
careful. And but I that's a cool event that's happening virtual event wise. There's one, forget the title right now, but it's basically like a virtual art walk of sorts.
Oh my
So
gosh, really?
yeah, so it's like three different music venue or three different arts venues, and I believe one is a music venue, and they're being hosted by different venues where they have different artists come in and collaborate with them. So one artist will work with like Hideout. I think there's another artist that's working with, I don't want to get it wrong because I'm not looking at it, but it's basically where it's like venues are collaborating with artists and they're just asking for like a $5 donation, but it's kind of like seems like it's about a 2 hour long event, and they just kind of have them on site streaming that way. So people are being innovative. And again, giving people options to both tune in from home or also go out safely and enjoy the city. So that's the focus of our content as it is. And then probably start doing more stuff where exploring like the suburbs, since there's a little bit more space out there. So looking at like, what fun events can you do, like fall activity wise, like apple picking or those type of cute things to do with friends.
I'm
So
doing with
yeah.
my nephew yesterday. Not yesterday, Saturday. So
Okay.
so just so you know, they have a place, it's called the Moni Reservoir. And people go out there to fish. A lot of fishing is being
Okay.
done. But I took my nephew to go like kayak. Well, we went to go kayaking, but because he's not 18, we only can do a tandem kayak and it was already rented out.
Okay.
We went canoeing instead.
Oh,
Um,
fun.
yeah, and it's like really, and it's way less expensive than if you were to do like kayaking on the Chicago River or anything like that.
Oh,
And it's a little
yeah.
bit more placid. It's a little bit more placid where it's not like on the Chicago River, it's a little bit more shaky. But it's very like, and also the Chicago River has like those big like tour boats coming through, which can be really scary when you're on a kayak. So yeah, it's just real chill, like you see like little lily pads and stuff.
Oh, that's cute. I'd be down for that. I haven't been canoeing or kayaking in a while. I'd be down for that.
Yeah, it's out in Moni. Like, so if you take I-57 going south towards Kankakee, you get off on the Moni Manhattan exit. And it's like it's literally right near the Amazon place that they have.
Okay.
And it's just right over there. And like I said, people do tons of fishing over there. They also have like a trail too, a trail where you can just go hiking. It's kind of a flat surface though, but it's kind of like a nature hiking little trail that they have, fishing, kayaking, and they have rowboats too.
Fun. Okay, I have to add that to my list. I'll have to add that to my list. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, so actually I've been on a journey to find stuff too. So I have another one for you too, Lake Catherine. I found
Okay.
Lake Catherine by mistake. Well, not really by mistake. I found it on Groupon. I took my niece and nephew there last year for a butterfly exhibit.
Okay.
But really, the place is super beautiful. It's not a real lake. It's more like a pond. But they have like geese and swans and ducks. And they have like this little trail around it. It's very pretty. It's also a nature reserve. And it's
Okay.
right off of, it's in Palos Heights. And they also have like a trail too that you can go, like the Cow Sag Trail. It's like a long trail that people go running on too. So
Okay.
that's right around it as well. So that was the first place I took my nephew, and so after I took him there, he challenged me to find like new places to take him to all the time.
Fun. Yeah, I'm down for that. And like I said, you get so caught up just being in the city, and like Chicago's so big, so it's like there's so much to cover here. But that's been one of my that was actually something I wrote down for this year. So I think it's going to be easier for me to actually do it since there's not so much open in the city, but to experience stuff in like the surrounding suburbs. Because in Ohio, it's really easy to do because you just drive everywhere in general. So you just happen to like come up upon a lot of stuff. But here in the city, it's like I don't have to drive to go far to anything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely been on my list to do more suburb seeking. So I'll have to add those on there, and I'll definitely let you know if I experience them or not.
Also, I haven't tried this yet. Oh, I live in the suburbs. That's why I know this stuff.
Okay, that helps.
If you need a suburban source, South suburban source, I might be it.
Okay.
Orland Park. I see Orland Park. There's a place where they do the baby goat yoga. So I think I'm going to try that.
That's funny. Okay. The baby goat, on your back.
Yeah, and then you just play with the goats afterwards. So, and they have it now where you have to like register in advance so they can make sure that you're socially distanced while you do it, so they can make sure they control the numbers of people and all that other good stuff. But yeah, I just want to go play with the goats and do yoga.
That's great. Yeah, I'll keep you as my resource for that community. You can send me some good leads that I can feature in the HauteSeeker.
Because I also have like my nephew who's holding me accountable to find new stuff. So might as well share what I find with you too.
We'll keep each other mutually updated on all that cool stuff.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Yes, I'd love to do it again. So.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Vanessa. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. Well, this has been another fabulous episode of the DIMPRP Podcast. I'm looking forward to having you join us again.